Nobody in their commission office, the Northern District of Tijuana, could forget the sound it made that animal on this Martian afternoon, a howl that didn't seem, coming from the throat of a dog, its bell bowels of the earth, a mixed lament with fury so primitive that it takes them far away. Officers, more veterans, tanned men, amidst clashes with drug traffickers and late-night meetings, they instinctively dipped into their coffers. The protagonist of this chaos was Titan, a 40-year-old Belgian Malinois. Kilos of pure muscle and scars, a legend within. A canine special operations dog group that, 6 months ago, had been converted into a ghost, in a violent shadow locked inside their cell, number 4, from the back kennel. Titan wasn't a dog of any kind. He had been. Him, binomial from Sergeant Carlos Mendoza, a local hero shot dead in compliance of the ambush. Must be during an ambush their route to Rosarito. Since then day, from the exact moment when Mendoza's blood stained the asphalt and the Titan were dragged along the banks. The dog's body had changed. If only the light had gone out in his eyes, amber, and in his place alone an abyss of aggression uncontrollable, and a pain like no other Coach Lowe failed to penetrate. They called her the Beast now, and their bedtime routine, was standing firm on the desk from the commander, waiting only for the final closure, because a dog that doesn't obey, that dies for its caretakers, and that lives in a state of stress, perpetual post-traumatic stress, is a loaded weapon, without insurance. But that afternoon, there, with a dense atmosphere and stifling humidity that foreshadowed one of those typical thunderstorms of the season, I put on more than just a raincoat. I dressed like a girl. If I called Lucia, I simply had 17 years, and he walked scam there. Heaviness and the "I'm tired of burdening the world with them" shoulders. In addition to a pregnancy, almost finished, it's been months since I barely managed to hide a gray sweatshirt that was way too big for me. What a body! Lucia shouldn't be there. The area of the kennels, a restricted area permeated with the smell of chlorine, stale food, and animal testosterone. I had already gone in looking for the lost and found, confused by the hallway's labyrinth of the station, trying to recover an old silver chain that there were stolen weeks ago. The only valuable copy that was Red Keba. Upon crossing the threshold yard, later, the usual afternoon silence was broken. It wasn't a normal bark. It was an explosion. Titan, who was past the last few weeks I've been completely absorbed in my thoughts there. Wall, ignoring the food and growling at his own shadow, rose like a resort upon feeling the change in wind. His nose, that perfect biological tool designed to detect explosives and narcotics. It captures something in the air that humans were unable to perceive. He threw himself at her. Steel bag of its cage with a violence that makes it vibrate completely. Metal structure, bang! The impact of body. The animal sleeps like a gunshot. And then he started barking. But it wasn't the attack bark, that dry, rhythmic sound they use to intimidate criminals. It was a frantic, high-pitched, desperate, and continuous bark. The thief stared at the girl, with the eyes wide open. The foam begins to form in the corners of her lips, pressing. Cement has to make the claws bleed. Officer Ramirez, the only one who still worked with Titan and who was secretly reading it. Adults over $60 million, the family is usually made up of 2 groups of people. Pieces of your meat. While having lunch trying to get the dog back, he ran toward in the cage shouting orders that were lost in "Destroying! Titan, silence! Down! Klaus, calm down!" Ramirez shouted. Using the dog's code name was used, but it was useless. The animal was in a trance. Lucia, paralyzed by terror just a few meters from the cage, fell hands together, backwards scam the eyes, filled with tears. The panic raises your heart rate. To any observer, that was obvious. The donkey dog I wanted tear the intruder apart. Others officers, they arrived running, digging up weapons, shouting to the wounded girl, who was running, while they were together, prohibition to the head from the dog on the other side of the river, ready to execute you if you managed to break it bolt, which already it was beginning to give way to the shocks of beast. What nobody I understood, in that moment of chaos which was invisible to him. Although the human eye did not perceive it, the animal's ancestral instinct indicated that Titan was not aiming at an enemy. The fractured mind of the dog, where memories of war and the smell of gunpowder stirred, he pain of lost. A spark of absolute recognition appeared. Titan's sense of smell, decomposition, the girl's scent in thousands of particles of information. It smelled, he fear. Yes, it smelled he cheap soap and the sweat. It was cold, but despite everything, I looked at something that bang scammed their force of a train. Genetics. Hello to Carlos. That girl, that terrified teenager, took it. In her blood is the unmistakable chemical trace of his dead lover. Lucia was there, daughter that Carlos had mentioned in whispers during long vigils nocturnal. The daughter who lived far scam his mother, and the one he sent I earn money every month. The princess who never met the dog she saved. The life of your priest so many times before the end. But there was something else, something much more urgent than him. Recognition. Titan's bark changed tone. He turned around. United Nations pitiful howl, almost United Nations crying. Your expert knows, trained to detect subtle chemical changes. In situations of extreme stress, the human body was experiencing a biological anomaly. The girl, Titan smelled their preeclampsia before doctors can to diagnose it. Hello, the sudden and dangerous increase of blood pressure. Smell the proteins in he sweat. Olia he death threat imminent, emanating from her like invisible black smoke. Don't read, he barked to attack her. Thief to warn. He was there, telling the stupid humans that they are there. They surrounded her so she would know she was there. Dying, that the baby is in danger, which they needed act. Yeah. Get out of here, shout the commander to arrive at the scene, watching as the girl started out wearing a pale dress, revealing her legs. Lucia gave United Nations he steps back, dizzy, vision clouding over, not because of the I'm afraid of the dog, I'm afraid because I am body, it was collapsing. The dog went crazy, broke through the fence and howled. Another officer, Ramirez, with the heart in the throat. Look at the Titan's eyes. For a fraction of a second, means of madness, I saw something that the they saw them too much. The dog wasn't showing them. Teeth in a quagmire of offensive aggression. He was in the alert posture of the wounded. There, the same stance that he adopted when United Nations my comrade fell in combat. I had an overwhelming need to reach her, not to attack her, but to protect her. The tragedy unfolded in seconds. Lucia, overwhelmed by the noise and her own medical crisis, if it gave there, it returns and the echo runs clumsily back. There, exit, fleeing of the monster. Upon seeing her, go away. Titan went berserk. With superhuman strength, he bet. The metal of the close old and rusty. With his teeth pressed against the steel, ignoring it. Pain in their gums, and with a final clash of his armored vehicle, the bolt, I've escaped. I'm at your mercy if you attack me. The commander gave the order. Titan took off, firing like a black missile and fire, but I wasn't there. Toward there, I completely ignored them, passing between their legs like a whisper, and ran. Toward their exit, following the girl's trail. Outside, the sky was broken. A torrential storm descended upon Tijuana, causing the dirt roads and rivers of mud. Lucia had managed to get out from the police station, but disoriented and on the verge of it, I would have fainted if I had deviated earlier. The wooded area that bordered scammed the channel of river, looking for a shortcut toward the bus stop. The rain erased the footprints. The cold, it soaked through to the bones, and the darkness of the early evening dissipated.
Titan ran scam. His nose was pressed to the ground, ignoring Ramirez's loud shouts, pursued in a patrol car. The dogs sensed the pain of their elderly war wounds with their humidity. But the mission was clear. The last link with his master was in danger. He found her halfway kilometer, collapsed under one tree, old, unconscious, soaked, the body convulsed slightly on the clay. The danger level was at its highest. If its temperature body went down further, or if the pressure continued, both the mother and the baby getting up, dying, there abandoned and forgotten. Titan came to his side. He was no longer a thief. If I approached with a delicacy that contradicted his size and its reputation as a killer. He sniffed her face, she licked their rain from her cheeks cold, and then did the only thing his training and your instinct they dictated. If you tripped over her, use his large, warm body like a thermal blanket, covering the torso and the girl's neighborhood, protecting her of the direct impact of rain, and transforming his animalistic zeal in the fragile body of a teenager. He stayed there, motionless, in guard. His ears they rotated like radars, picking up every sound of the storm. Heard the steps as he approached.
He, creaking of the branches and the flashlights cutting the darkness, Titan emitted United Nations, a low, warning growl. It was Ramirez and the rescue team. They shine a light on him. Seen, the officials arrested dry, moved by the image. The demonic dog, the animal that everyone wanted to sacrifice because it was beyond redemption, was there, transformed into United Nations angel furry guardian. Dark, protecting the unknown scam his own life. Ramirez approached slowly, with hands up, no weapons. Titan, "Good boy," he whispers, with the voice broken by the emotion. "Yes, let's go, partner. Mission compliment." The dog Mirror, her eyes amber, finally left her. Madness, showing only one endless weariness and loyalty unbreakable. He let go. A long, deep sigh, lowering her head, allowing the paramedics to approach. When they lifted Lucia up in their Camilla, Titan didn't move. I walked beside him, Camilla limping a little, and approached the ambulance. But no one dared to stop him. During trip to the hospital, with the siren's wail, Titan supports his head in the girl's lifeless hand. It was in that moment, under the strobe lights of the ambulance, when Ramirez saw, she looked so much like her. The shape of her nose, the line of her jaw. She was her spitting image. From Sergeant Mendoza. The recovery, it was slow but miraculous. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that there was the arrival of aid. It had been a matter of minutes. If the girl could have passed half an hour more of Sol, he could scam. And if, in the case of preeclampsia, the outcome would have been fatal. When Lucia woke up days later, already a mother of one healthy child, they told the story about the dog. They told him who had been his owner. I tell him, that animal that now he slept in his hospital bed because he refused to eat anything. They took out of the room. There was acquaintance in she to the family they thought were lost forever. The final scene of this story did not happen in a battlefield, but in his sunny garden of a small house outside of city, months later. Titan was not alive, in a concrete cell. He had been transferred from there with honors. The police, with his aggressive record erased and replaced by a valuable medal, now face the dog that used to have to go with a flight attendant. Come in, lie down on the green meadow. With his eyes closed, he enjoys the sun. To the south, a baby sits awkwardly, holding his hands. Chubby the ears of the dog, pulling them childlike curiosity. Titan didn't move, did he? A tense, newly opened muscle, United Nations eye presumably, it gave United Nations soft lick the face of. The baby fell asleep and then fell asleep again. Lucia watched from there,
porch with a cup of coffee on her hand and a peaceful smile that I didn't had in years. The trauma of war and their loneliness, they healed each other from abandonment. The warrior had found his house, and the lost girl had been found. Guardian. And in the silence of that quiet afternoon, if he paid close enough attention, he could almost feel Sergeant Mendoza's presence, smiling from somewhere, knowing that his was a more faithful companion, complement his last and most important mission, to take care of what matters most to him. The sound of the rain beating the corrugated sheet roof police station in the outskirts of Monterey were not white noise inviting a storm, but a hammer incessant, almost like Chinese torture that took 3 days without giving a break, turning the dirt road surroundings in mudflats impassable and closing them bones of the officers from the night shift. But nobody, I felt heat cold and the humidity, with as much intensity as the beast that inhabited in their cell number 4 of the dog pavilion. A restricted area where the fluorescent light is kept off. Scan, an electric buzzing that punctuates the nerves on edge. There, in the shadows, was Rex, a Belgian Malinois shepherd who was once he pride of tactical unit. An animal. His charcoal and ochre-colored fur shone under the sun of the parades, and his perfect muscles could be seen there. Sent by the creators, but now, after 6 months of lockdown and isolation, it was nothing more than a skeletal shadow of what it once was, a ghost that died. The hours looking at a spot fixed in their unpainted cement wall, ignoring the premium quality croquette dish available for reservation. Scan. Their ambient humidity and repellent. Any attempt at human contact with United Nations snarl. Sordid, guttural, born from the deepest part of his chest, and as deep as stones. The grinding, a clear warning that the dog is a hero there, was dead, and only remained an animal broken by war and grief. To understand why Rex was in that cell, with a euthanasia order scheduled for him Fridays for the tomorrow resting on the desk, from the commander under a pile of bureaucratic documents, we had to understand. History from Sergeant Eduardo Lalo Martinez, the only human being Rex had allowed to enter his inner circle, the man whose voice was the only law the dog knew, and whose scent, a mixture of cheap tobacco, lavender soap, and nail polish remover, remained ingrained in the animal's olfactory memory as a tattoo, invisible that he burning the soul every time it closed the eyes. The ambush in there. The route to Nuevo Laredo had been brutal, fast and reckless, a chaotic jumble of crossfire, screams and explosions from where. The truck's armor hadn't been enough, and even Rex had fought with their ferocity of a demon, tearing their flesh aggressors and recipients bullet impact. The right flank that it leaves a long pink scar where the hair is. I grew up again. I couldn't save Lalo. And there, image of your human falling onto the asphalt, with life slipping away for them eyes while you whisper, "One last, silent, elegant, silent," was repeated. In the dog's mind, every night, a nightmare induced that he had to wake up to screams and bites. The air searching for an enemy that no longer existed there. Since then, that day, Rex had been declared fit for its service. A cold, clinical label to describe a dog that had gotten lost their reason, which had attacked that of the coaches who tried put it there. Correa, and who had been turned into United Nations passive, dangerous for the department. A ticking time bomb, scam sharp teeth that no one you knew it as disable. Except maybe Officer Marco. A 50-year veteran year scam, he a face etched with wrinkles and with the tired gaze of someone who has witnessed too much cruelty. The calls, who refused to resign because it was also knew the bitter taste of stress post-traumatic and Venus in the eyes, Amber Rex in a monster, but a fallen comrade who needs a friend. Even this brother would have to keep a safe distance so as not to be destroyed.
That stormy afternoon, Marco was sitting in a folding bench in front of the cage, with a moistening coffee pot in hands, talking to Rex in a soft, monotonous voice, telling him about the weather, about the traffic, about anything he had saved. A connection link within the dog remained immobile, with the ears flattened against the skull and a lost gaze, he empty, ignoring man but tolerating his presence like one tolerates a persistent fly. Nobody. I had hoped that the routine of despair would be broken that Tuesday, and much less than that, for example, if the people of the people of the people of the common people, the arrival of someone. I immerse myself completely in the police world, a figure who enters there. Main door of the police station soaked to the bones, leaving a trail of dirty water in the linoleum floor is trapped again. It was a girl, just a dead girl. Years call Sophia, with he hair, the darkness surprised them face to face. Rain and a gray sweater. 3 larger sizes that I can't hide from anyone. Bulk highlighted from 8 months of shame that he carries. Scam, visible difficulty. Walking scam. The feet squeezed into worn-out canvas sneakers that can't be read. They gave support. Sophia wasn't here, there to report on crime, nor visit. The one stopped. He was lost, seeking shelter from the storm and perhaps a little guidance, because we had fallen without money for him. Truck and his cell phone were dead, and the police station, with its lights on, it seemed the only safe place in average of the flood, although he entered immediately. Their inquisitive glances, officers on duty. Glances that their prohibition by her humble appearance and status made her feel small and vulnerable. Upon crossing the threshold into he corridor that connected scam he yard back where they were the kennels, looking for a bathroom that someone you had indicated with a broken gesture, the air changed. There the atmospheric pressure seemed to drop like a jolt, and the usual silence in the dog area felt heavy, dense, almost electric. Rex, who had spent hours without moving, stood up. Their head, his nasal cavities dilated violently, sucking the humid air, processing millions of odor particles in a fraction of a second, separating the aroma from ozone, chlorine, and stale coffee, and detecting something that made an impact. His reptilian brain with their force of a lightning bolt, a genetic signature, an unmistakable biological fingerprint that existed extinct of the face of Earth. Hello, Lalo. That's elegant. That's unknown woman walking scam fear on the other side of block wall, looking at his master's blood, looking at the letters Lalo kept in his casillero. It smelled like the same essence, but a mixture with something bad, something sweet and metallic. Something urgent. The bark that came from Rex's throat was not heard. A normal dog barking sound was like a sonic boom, making them vibrate, the window glass, and stopped the conversations throughout station. A roar full of desperation and urgency that made Marco spill his coffee and jump out of his seat, carrying "Surrender your weapon" for pure reflection. Rex lunged at her. The steel bag of its cage with suicidal violence, its claws tearing at the cement, its teeth scathing the metal. The metal has such resistance that they gums you. They bled instantly, staining the rays red, while their eyes, once dead, now Ardian scam United Nations frenzied fire, nailed to their address of where it was the girl. The one who couldn't see, but felt with every fiber of your being. The other dogs in the kennel, infected by it. Rex's energy caused them to start barking too, creating a cacophony. Deafening, a chorus of chaos that resonated in concrete walls like hymn soundtrack of the WoW, but Rex's barking was unmistakable. He had a high note at the end, a cheese that transformed in herd. The kind of sound that search dogs do when a victim is found alive under the rubble, a mixture of "here he is" and "help." Sophia, who had barely taken a few steps towards him, hallway, stayed paralyzed. With protecting your hands, his eye arrived instinctively. Terror made him pale. He faced when listening to the beast that seemed to want to knock him down. Building towards it. A young officer run towards it. She screamed that she was hurt, that she had returned to the lobby,
thinking that the presence of a civilian had agitated the animal. But what none of the humans could understand,
limited by their basic senses, was that Rex didn't want to attack. Rex was in absolute protection mode because his nose on the ground had detected it, daughter of her master. But she senses something much more dangerous. The girl's body was in very bad shape, terribly bad. Rex could hold the change in pheromones, the sudden increase in blood pressure, the acrid smell of proteins leaking from where the dog isn't. With her elite training and trauma-honed instincts, told me that the girl was, I am suffering from a severe preeclampsia crisis, that I did not receive aid immediately. She and the baby she carried inside, their Lalo's granddaughter, they were going to die that same evening. Chaos erupts in seconds when he old cage latch, weakened by rest and the constant impacts of the caged animal kilos, emitted United Nations agonizing, and a metallic squealing ceased. There the door burst open and Rex jumped out like a black projectile, ignoring Marco, who was shouting his name, ignoring the officers who unearthed their weapons in the hallway. Moving with a speed that defied the laws of physics, its claws twitched. In the linoleum while took the curve towards where it was Sophia. "Shoot him if he comes close," shout the commander who had just left his workshop. And time it seemed to deter. The scene seen in slow motion. The dog running scam with her mouth open. The screaming girl covered. The guy waiting for the bite. The officer pointing with a trembling man. But Rex didn't jump on her. Rex slid to his feet instead of clenching his jaw. Her throat, she began to push at scam, his snout toward their wall, interposing his body between her and the police, barking towards the officers with a defensive posture, showing teeth not to the girl, bell for them armed men there, aim. Sophia, with a lost look, felt the dog's paws rest gently on his leg, and then, overwhelmed by its stress and the Rex's medical condition, already he had been detected. His eyes were focused in white, and his knees they failed, collapsing toward the ground. Rex reacted instantly, getting into its small body to cushion the fall, preventing its belly. Had fallen to the ground, and once she was in his sweat, the dog transformed. I stopped barking at them, police officers, and began to lick frantically the girl's face, moaning, pushing her scam there, trying to keep her conscious, looking at Marco with an expression the veteran officer immediately recognized. There, the same look I had when Lalo left. Here's a look that screams, "Do something, you stupid people, if you go." It was Marco who, below, first he took up arms, understanding what he was doing blow by blow. Passing by, reading the body language of dogs that so many others there were misinterpreted as pure aggression. "To the fire! Nobody fire!" shout with an authoritarian voice. Running toward the girl and the dog. "He's not attacking, he's protecting! Call an ambulance, quick!" As they approached, Marco saw that Rex wasn't showing fury, but anxiety. And when the officer crowded around the unconscious girl so that he can take her away, the pulse, the dog didn't. It bit. Simply supported there with his head resting on Sophia's chest, he was gently growling at anyone who approached too quickly, marking an absolute safety perimeter. The wait for the ambulance, those were 10 eternal minutes in which the storm roared. He seemed to want to tear down the walls, and throughout all this, Rex didn't move time 1 millimeter, acting as a living thermal blanket, transferring its warmth to the body. The girl's coldness, her eyes amber, fixed in their door, watching, waiting. When the paramedics arrived, scanned their Camilla. There was a moment of tension. The fear that the dog would attack the rescuers was real. But Rex, demonstrating an intelligence that bordered on humanity, withdrew just enough to leave them work, but never stopped playing like a child with some part of his body, monitoring every movement, every IV line that is read. They placed each bandage. The crucial moment. When they went up there, Camilla, to the ambulance.
Protocol dictated that the dog could not go, and a young officer, he tried to grab Rex from a collar to restrain him. The growl he let out the animal was so terrifying that he man lose their correa. While you were burning. Marco intervenes, coming over. Their determination in the eyes of the animal, which loyalty unbreakable that transcends the rules and the rules. "Let's go up," Marco ordered. "Let's go up." He also on the back medical unit. If they try to come down, we'll have to kill them, because they won't leave her side. She's yours. Work. Now it's a pack. And so the ambulance game ripped their rein with their sirens. Pushing a teenager to the limit. Dead, according to a nervous paramedic and a special operations dog covered in scars from travel scam, his snout gently leaning on him belly. A commotion emanated from the patient, as if he realized that there was something inside, another life to protect. In the hospital, the situation changed. Consultation between medical staff. Rex became an emergency room attendant, refusing to eat or drink until someone else did. Go out and give him news. Patrol he aisle, scam he a soldier's marching step guard. It was in those hours of waiting, with the smell of antiseptic and burnt coffee filling the air, when Marco, reviewing them among the girl's belongings to identify her, I found inside a worn canvas card, protected by an old plastic, and a photograph wrinkled and faded by time. In the photo, one man, the young woman, dressed in a military uniform, smiled, hugging a girl little in a park. Marco felt United Nations, naked. In the throat tightens and tears well up. The eyes to recognize their smile unmistakable, like his friend Lalo Martinez. Every charge was felt in that moment. The behavior of the dog, the connection immediate, their unbridled madness, their cell. Rex had not. I looked at a stranger. I had found him there. The girl whom Lalo never got to see grow up had found the last living piece of herself, Buddy dead. Sophia's recovery, it was slow and painful, the eclampsia there. Was they pushed him to the limit, and doctors confirmed he hadn't been there. Intervention aggressive of the dog that alerted everyone, and there I kept. If it had been hot, the result would have been fatal for both of them. Awake 3 days later, confused and in pain in a room white, the first thing I saw, it wasn't a nurse. It was the bell of her ears pointed, and some eyes amber that there they watched from the foot of the bed. Marco sat on a bench to one side. And in a soft voice, tale their history, lay his father's cattle, from the brave that he had been, and how his four-legged companion had waited years to fulfill this dream. Your last promise, take care of yourself. Family. Sophia, she wept, in a melancholic mood, the bell of a profound release, caressing it head of the dog that now rest his snout in his hand, closing the eyes. A sigh of absolute peace, as if I could finally free myself from the weight of war. The end of this story did not happen in their commission, nor in a battlefield. Months later, in a small house with United Nations yard, back to where the grass grows wild and green, a scene that seemed otherworldly could be seen. Rex, the dog once considered an irredeemable lethal weapon, lay in the shadow of a mesquite. There was no more strain in your muscles. You didn't know nightmares. During his naps, a 6-month-old baby clung to him, pulling him along, ears and drooling on his fur dark. And the dog, far from being bothered, gave gentle slaps the face to do it laughter. Sophia the eye looked from the kitchen while was preparing he bottle, knowing that they would never be left alone or unprotected, because spirit of his father in that animal, in and if silent guardian who had found his redemption not in their violence, but in the purest and most innocent love, proving that even the most broken souls can heal when to find someone to take care of. They say that sometimes, when he winds soup, Rex, who comes from the north and smells the rain, gets up, their head and look towards the horizon, not seeking enemies, just greeting one old friend who read smile of the other. On the other hand, I thanked him for having finished its mission. The air inside its enclosure, the canine dog from the North District Canine Unit was addicted and loaded. Scam that heaviness, damp, metallic floor lying in the places where the hope he has gone to die slowly. Suffocated by bureaucracy and violence in a city, a border that never dies. It wasn't just that. The cheap chlorine smell that was used for renting polished cement floors, nor the rancid smell of dog food, dampened by the storm that was hitting the area. The outside, it was its smell. Fear, the smell of dried adrenaline, and above all, the unmistakable smell in mourning. In there, cell number 4, the furthest from the main entrance and the darkest, from where the light from the fluorescent tubes scan an electrical buzzing that sounds like a dying insect trapped in amber. Left behind a fallen legend. Official name in the police officer's records showed that the officer was Titan, a 40-kilo Belgian Malinois shepherd of pure muscle, nerves, and lethal capacity. But the corridors, between the fearful whispers of the rookie officers and the pitying looks from the veterans, nobody had called that because of his name. Sometimes he was referred to as the Phantom. The bad days simply like the bomb. Titan didn't move. He was wearing 3 days lying on his left flank, with their heads supported on its front legs, facing backwards their unpainted concrete block wall, where there is a crack zigzagging. It resembled the scar that crossed his own back. To a casual observer, the dog might appear to be asleep, but Titan wasn't. I never really slept. His eyes, a deep amber color, were lonely. Shine scam their keen intelligence, typical of a tactical predator, now fixed, open, crystalline, playing over and over the horror movie that was installed in his cerebral cortex. In his mind was not in a cage in Tijuana. In his mind was back in Aya. He has been of the Aya drove to Tamaulipas, under a scorching sun heatar, feeling their vibration from the engine of the armored truck, listening there the calm breathing of his trainer, Sergeant Carlos Mendoza. The memory was so vivid that Titan could taste the octopus in it, his language. He could feel Mendoza's calloused hand gently scratching him from behind. Ear right, in and if spot. Exactly that I had to sigh. "Relax, friend, today is an easy day, Reed," he said, Mendoza's voice in his. I remember a deep, confident voice that was Titan's only anchor in the world. And then the memory. It changed, it fractured. The sound. And if sharp crack that broke the world in two. The sound of bullets breaking the air. The acrid smell of burnt gunpowder. And the cordite, their strong impact, bodies against metal. Titan remembered. It's chaos. Remember your own situation. Fangs nailing in the arm of aggressor. Hot-blooded filling your mouth. But above all, remember Mendoza's sudden silence. The moment the hand that, the guide let go of the Korea. The moment when your human being, your priest, your everything, ceases to be one. Warrior, and became in a dead weight on the floor. A thunderclap made the foundations of the police station, bringing Titan back to the present with a violent jolt. The dog was split in half, one a low, dangerous, resonant growl. My chest like a diesel engine starting up. It's cold. Your ears will stick to you. Skull. Hated storms. Barometric pressure toward pain. There, old gunshot wound. His chair. But more than that, the thunder of the darling. It sounded too similar to fragmentation grenades. Outside the cage, seated on a folding metal stool, Officer Ramirez observed the animal with a mixture of respect and profound sadness. Ramirez was a quinquagenarian years with his face etched with premature wrinkles and whose tired eyes he had seen too much human evil. A thermos of coffee, the hand and a half-eaten sandwich, there another. But if he had resigned hunger upon seeing the reaction of the dog before the thunder. "You see, boy," Ramirez already murmured, His voice was only one. I whispered that I shouldn't change it any more. Beast, for me. I like them too. The noises, strong. Calm. Here. Nobody's going to make you damage. But Titan wouldn't allow it. I believed. To Titan, all humans except one were threats, potential annoyances, or irrelevant issues. Since then, Mendoza's death. 6 coaches work scam. They finished. In the hospital with severe bites that required surgery reconstructive. The others 4, simply they resigned, terrified by it. The intensity of the animal's gaze. A gaze that did not ask questions, compassion. A bell that promised violence. The diagnosis of veterinarian driver, it had been clinical and cold, written in a piece of paper with he official member who now he rested on the desk of the commander, sealing the dog's fate. Aggression uncontrollable as a result of severe trauma, irrecoverable. Recommended euthanasia, humanitarian aid for security, personal. The closure was marked for him. Come. There were less than 48 hours left. Ramirez knew this. I knew you were watching a dead. I looked at the dog and the business scam their head, feeling United Nations naked in the throat. You're not bad, Titan. I say, I'm addicted to air. Only you are, he broken heart. Like you, like all of us. The dog, I ignored it and put it back in its place. Head, but its ears continued moving like independent radars, scanning every sound frequency in their building. It could hear he leak from a rotating pipe 3 corridors further on. I could hear he scratching from 8 in the false ceiling. I could hear the deleted conversations from them officers in their reception, leaving their rain and traffic. Your world was a sound map of threats. Was so when the routine of the desperation erupted. It wasn't visual, it was chemical. Titan's nostrils dilated from the blow, sucking the air with force. In average from the ozone smell of the storm. And it smelled of disinfectant, something new had come in. In he building. A molecule. A microscopic particle that traveled floating through the ventilation ducts, transverse he security corridor, and come on cell number 4. Titan stood up. I didn't go this time. United Nations, slow and painful movement. It was United Nations resort. His muscles tense beneath him. Fur dark, each tendon vibrating with an electrical voltage. The smell was impossible. It was an aroma that brain, there was filed, in the rug from things lost forever. Look at the vanilla and a specific type of cheap detergent. Oil the wood, old. But, despite everything, he, the deepest, most molecular oil in the blood of Carlos Mendoza. Titan unleashed. A groan, a high-pitched, strange sound that Ramirez had emitted. Fall your coffee thermos. The dog started pacing back and forth in the cage, one, pendulum-like, frenetic movement. Its claws are long. A quick click against the cement. What? Betray? Ramirez asked, standing up with the black instinctively on his safety stick. What?
Did you hear that, champ? Titan didn't. He looked. His attention was nailed to their access door to the kennel, this heavy metal door that separates your prison world of the rest of the police station. Someone approached. Someone who was carrying your master's genetic code. Titan's heart, which for months had been barking at the slowness of the depression, it began pumping blood at a dizzying speed. Pumping, pumping, pumping. From the other side of that door, leaning towards the monster that had just awakened, approached a small figure. It wasn't a soldier. It wasn't a police officer. She was a child. Or almost a child. She had 17 years, but her big dark eyes, they guarded an innocence that life had never managed to take from anyone, even though had tried with cruelty. Her name is Lucia. She was walking scam difficult, dragging her feet. Her little hands secondary the weight of one belly bulky that strained her screen gray sweatshirt. 8 months of shame. I was soaked, cold, lost in the bureaucratic labyrinths of station, looking for a bathroom, looking for help, looking for a way out of the storm that was trapped in their street. Lucia stopped in front of the door from the kennel area. A red sign says, "No trespassing, restricted zone for attackers." But there are tears in her eyes and dizziness. I felt you disabled read scam clarity. I just wanted sit down. It hurt. There, head, a pain sharp behind the eyes that throbbed to the rhythm of your heart. I didn't know that the pain was a warning of his own body, a biological alarm siren indicating that the blood pressure was reaching critical levels. It pushed their door. The hinge, lacking acceptance, squealed. In the moment when the door opened and the air their hallway mixed scam the air of the dog pound, Titan confirmed. I saw it. I didn't see any intruders. I didn't see any threats. I saw them. Mendoza's eyes on a woman's face. I saw it. You were walking the same way. But then your nose got caught. The second scent. Down below from the familiar scent of his master's genetics, a bitter, metallic, and poisonous smell. Its smell, disease, the smell of the preeclampsia. Titan's brain, trained to detect explosives, drugs, and people still alive under rubble, processes their information in milliseconds. Titan opened mouth and let go out the sound that would change the destiny of all in that room. It wasn't a bark. It was United Nations destroying her. He attacked her with such violence that she structure entire vibrating. The metal colliding with the metal, the noise of an accident. Automotive. Woof, woof, woof. Ramirez backed away, stumbling. Scam on his bench, pale as a ghost. Never, in your 20 years of service, he had seen a dog enter in that state of excitement. Foam began to shoot out of Titan's mouth and eyes. They were exorbitant. Fixed in the girl who just came in and now was paralyzed in there. They cover their mouths with their hands, terrified. For Ramirez, for Lucia, and for them. Officers who began running towards him hallway upon hearing his scandal, that it seemed an outburst of anger killer. It seemed the dog wanted to devour her. Nobody I realized that Titan wasn't shouting, "I'm going to kill you." Titan was shouting, "She's killing, help her, she's one of me."